So this will be my recap for the engineer class for the condition damage for 2016, especially when it comes to general PvE. Now obviously next year there will be some new changes, and therefore when the time comes I'll be doing another video and see what I can improve upon based on this video and see what are the changes. And so when the time comes I'll be prepared for that. Now just for me to give a little bit of a background for the engineer. The engineer is an interesting class. It has especially when it comes to condition damage, it has the capability of dealing all of the condition damage type in the game, and it is quite a rough learning curve for the engineer, especially for newcomers. So for those of you who are completely new to the game, I would say that engineer would require some time and effort for you to learn the class. A good engineer is able to deal damage, get out of situation when it's critical, and also be able to use the skill that very effectively in regard to crowd control, disable, and also to support your allies. And so a good engineer is able to do all of that effectively, and so it would require some time and effort for you to master everything for the engineer. And so I would recommend for the newcomers, especially for those of you who just recently bought the game, to try out the budget option first to see if it's something that you would like to invest a lot of resources on, and fully making the commitment for the class before going for the maximized damage options. And so without further ado, I would like to get into the build. So I'll start up with the specialization, then I'll move on to the armor, and then weapons, and then other information. Alright, so let's move on to the specialization of the engineer. But before I talk about the specialization of the engineer, let me just put it up right here. Before I talk about this, I'd like to just quickly touch on the condition damage of the engineer, just a little bit in regard to the skill. Alright, so as you can see in here, the engineer has the ability to deal multiple condition damage type in the game, and it's safe for me to say that the engineer has the ability to deal all of the condition damage type in the game, both in crowd control and also for the condition damage. So as you can see in here, cripple, immobilize, blindness, vulnerability, confusions, etc. So that's precisely why I am using the bomb kit and also the grenade kit. As you can see in here, it deals multiple condition damage types and also the crowd control as well. Alright, so given that reasons, let's go back to the specializations. For the specialization, I am using the explosives, firearms, and the tools. For the explosives, I am using the glass cannon, the bottom, and bottom. Now for the glass cannon, sometimes for the first attribute, sometimes I prefer to swap to the grenade to increase the blast radius of the grenade and also to increase my velocity by 100%. But it's situational, because not all the time I will be swapping my kit from time to time to apply multiple condition damage on the target or multiple targets. And because of that, I don't usually just stick with my grenade. But if you prefer to have extra range attack or the AoE effect increased by 60 points, then feel free to have this attribute. But otherwise, I would highly recommend you to just stick with the glass cannon, which will increase your overall damage by 5%, and also whenever your health threshold is above 90%, which is about 14,330 points. Next one, I have the short fuse, and because I will be primarily using my bomb kit to apply the condition damage to the target or multiple targets, so I prefer to have the bomb that can reduce the recharge by 20% and also increase the explode time of the bomb faster. Alright, now the last one, Thermobaric Detonations. So this one will increase my power kit damage by 25% and also combo finisher the blast, so it can blast around the mobs. So as you can see in here, the big old bomb, so let me just drop it. See, that will deal quite a massive damage to the to multiple targets, and it also increase the damage of that one by 25%, and that's what I prefer to have. Now for the firearms will be tailored to the pistol, and as you can see in here, the pistol has a lot of condition damage, right? And you'll be using dual pistols for this build, and because of that, I like to have the chemical rounds, which will increase my condition durations of every single one of them by 50 points, and that is massive. So it's safe for me to say that the engineer has the ability to have its specialization tailored to the condition durations by 50% without the need of spending a lot of resources in Rune to have the condition damage, the condition duration increase. Yeah, so this is very good for the engineer, especially when you are using the dual pistols. Next one, you gain the condition damage based on your precisions. Again, you know, it's common sense. There's not much I can go into further detail about this. The more condition damage you have, the better. Now the last one, the powder. Now as you can see in here that I have the blowtorch right here, it would deal a tremendous amount of damage at 3 stacks, 11,680 points. That's massive, right? Now combine that with this burning you apply lasts longer and your critical hits inflict burning. So whenever you apply the critical hits, you will have more condition damage. You will have more burning condition damage, and that is nuts. That's just nuts. Duration increased by 33%. So combine between that one, 33% combined with 50%, that's like what, 83%, and 83% just from your specializations. I think that this is just nuts, and that doesn't include with your Viper sets. If you are going for the maximizing options, you will have 100% if you use full Viper sets, right? So that just to me, this is just insane that you have the best condition damage tab in the game, which is burning. Burning has the best damage overall of all of the condition damage tab in the game, and combine that with the specialization that you have from your pistols. And so if you were going for the Viper set, full Viper set, you will have straight up 100% points of your burning condition durations. And so that is just insane. To me, I just find it really fascinating for the engineer to have the specialization tailor into the condition durations without the need to go with the spear rune of both to increase the burning condition damage and burning durations. It's, yeah. Alright, so let's move on to the next one, tools. For the tools, I'm using middle, which is middle, top, and middle. Now this one will provide me with extra survivability. So activate the utility rules when blind or disabled. It will break me out of stun, and also it will gain me. It will provide me with a fury and immunity to blindness, so I can keep on dealing damage to the mobs, but also provide me with extra critical chance. And that critical chance combined with this one, it will provide me with an extra it's providing me with more ability to deal condition damage from the critical hits. Alright, so for the next one, I have the Streamlight kits. Now this one, equipping the kits will provide me with a swiftness, and as you can see in here, swiftness will provide you with an increase in movement speed by 33%, and whenever you swap the kits, you will have the swiftness, and so that's really good, especially when you need to move from one map to the other, from one location to the other in the meta event. And so the extra movement speed will help a lot in regard to getting into the locations and defending the mobs or the NPCs, or you know, whatever the events is required you to do. Last one, endurance generation. Endurance generations is survival, of course, as you can see. You need the endurance generation to dodge and evade the attack. So having the extra endurance generation by 50%, it will increase your endurance bar to regenerate faster, and so you can continue to evade the attacks from the mobs. Alright, so now let's talk about utility. For the healing, I'm using the healing turret, and for these, you know, bomb kit and grenade kit, I already mentioned to you earlier in the section, so I won't be touching them again. So for the, let's touch on the elite before I'm touching on the last utility. So for the elite, I'm using the supply crate. Now the supply crate will provide me with a punch of turret, and also what do you call it, med pack. So it will provide me with those for two reasons. First of all, it's survival, and also for extra damage as well when you're dropping this kit on the ground. Now sometimes I prefer to use the golem, but that's situational. Well, so whenever I do the, let's say I solo roaming in the map, right, I don't have a lot of people with me, and so because of that I prefer to have an extra companion to help me fight or help me defense, increase my defense. And you know, the duration of the golem is 40 seconds for 2 of them, but for this one it is a little bit longer. The duration for the supply crate is 60 seconds, is a minute, and it will only take about 120 seconds to recharge. So between, you know, the 3 golems, actually, yeah, between the 2 golems, the attack golems and the defense golems, I prefer to use the supply crate from time to time, because you know, it just has a shorter cooldown, 120 seconds compared to 180 seconds. This is 3 minutes compared to 2 minutes, and the duration for this one is 1 minute, and the duration for this one is only 40 seconds. So it just make more sense for me to be using the supply crate. Alright, so for the last utility sorry about that, the last utility, I'm using the flame turret. The flame turret, why? Because I prefer to have an extra, you can call it companion, you can call it a more defense mechanism for the engineer to tackle with the mobs coming from a different direction. So let's put in an example, right? So imagine that I have mobs coming to me from this side, that side and that side, and because I am only a single person, I need to focus my attention to be dealing with the mobs coming from this side, but I also want to somebody or a companion to be dealing with the mobs coming from that side as well, so that I don't have to focus on, you know, dealing with that. And as you recall that in the meta event, the more mobs that you kill, the more reward that you will get, and that precisely why I prefer to have the flame turret to deal damage to the mobs coming from that side, and I don't have to worry about this side, and I just focus my attention on dealing with the mobs coming from this side, and that is why I have the flame turret. And also, if you have the supply crate, you can also drop them to deal with the mob coming in front of you, and so you can only you can focus your attention to be dealing more from the right side, right? But when it comes to the single target, so especially when it comes to the boss, let's put it for example. Let's imagine that there's a big boss in front of me. So ideally, I don't want to have the supply turret, because the supply turret will deal damage to the boss, obviously. But in terms of the damage, I will be more benefit of having the flamethrower. The flamethrower will allow me to have extra skill. So as you can see in here that I have the burning, and I also have the crowd control as well, which is push back the foes and projectiles with the hot air plus burning foes that are already on fire. So I can deal extra burning condition damage, especially when it comes to the Nepal. This one right here, you can just drop it and it would deal damage to the boss the longer that he or she is staying in that location. So that's very good, and it also provides you with the blinding nearby foes, so it's extra survival skill. So when it comes to a single target, I will be using the entire kit, the 3 kits: bomb kit, grenade kit and flamethrower weapon kits, to deal extra damage to a single target, especially when it comes to the boss. Otherwise, you know, from time to time, whenever I'm room in the map or doing the meta event, not having the big bosses, you know, say champion, and also dealing with a lot of mobs coming after me, I'll be using the flame turret to help me deal with the mobs coming from that side, and also grenade supply crate elite to be dealing with mobs from that side, and I will just focus my attention to the other one. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the specializations. I'll be moving to the, what do you call it? My mind just gone blank. Equipment. Yeah, I'll be moving on to the equipment section right now. Now, when it comes to the equipment choice for the maximum options, maximum damage option, again, it will be fully Vipers for the equipment, and the rune will be superior rune of the Berserker. Now, because the engineer has the ability to deal with multiple targets using different type of the condition damage, and because of that, it is there's no fixed runes. So unlike, let's say, the Burn Guardian that I have recently made, or the what do you call it, the Burn Warrior, those two obviously it's burn, right? The burn condition damage is the main top, and so I didn't really consider any other ones except for maybe the Burn Warrior has the bleeding. However, because the engineer has the ability to deal with all of the condition damage tab in the game, and because of that, it is there is no fixed rune that can increase one condition damage tab, and so that is precisely why I choose to go with the superior rune of the Berserker. That was the first reason. The second reason was because the engineer, if you look back at my specialization section of this video about a few minutes ago, you will see that in the second specializations, the firearms, there is a second attribute in the firearms specializations called the Pinpoint Distribution. The Pinpoint Distribution will allow you to have an extra condition damage based on your precisions, and that will be 10% of your precisions will be converted into the condition damage. Now, the superior rune of the Berserker allows you to have extra precisions into the stats from the runes, and because of that, it makes sense for you to be aiming for, you know, the more precisions that you have, the more that it will convert into your condition damage, and that's precisely why I chose to go with the superior rune of the Berserker. Now, for the accessory is quite interesting in my personal opinion. Now that you have the equipment Vipers, the superior rune of Berserker, so when it comes to the accessory, right, what I use is, for now, at the moment, for my engineer, I use a combination between the Vipers and the Sinisters. So the Vipers, I have the Backpiece, the amulet, the first ring, and the accessory, the first accessory. Now, for the second accessory and the second ring, I use Sinisters. This is because, as I already mentioned to you guys earlier in the video, in the specializations again, that the engineer has the ability to increase the condition duration from the specializations already. So because of that, I felt that it was more logical for me to make it to increase my condition damage from the Sinister set, because the condition duration is already you know, up really high already from the specialization, combined with all of my equipment set to be full Vipers, along with my weapons also full Vipers as well, and also the four pieces of my trinkets already Vipers. So it just make a lot more sense for me to pursue having Sinisters for my secondary rings and secondary accessory. But feel free to go with full Vipers if that is something that you prefer. I'm just giving you some of the options. Alright, so now let's move on to the budget option. For the budget options, as always, now I always recommend people to go for the Karma armor from the temple in, you know, in the all regions, Curse Short, straight up devastations, and those kind of maps. So for the engineer, I don't recommend people to go for the Rabid set, which is precision, toughness, and condition damage. I don't. The reason for me to be recommending the Rampagers instead of the Rabid set, like I usually do for most of my condition damage class, is because the Rampagers allow you to have extra precisions into your stats. And again, as I already mentioned to you guys earlier in the video, and also earlier in the section of this earlier part in the section of the equipment, the precisions will convert your 10% of your 10% of your precisions will be converted into your condition damage, and so because of that, the more precisions that you have, the more that will convert into the condition damage. And the Rampager stat is specialized in power, precisions, and condition damage, and so with the precisions being the highest stats, and the other two are minors. So the precisions is major for the Rampagers, and the two minors is the two minors are the power and the condition damage, and that's why I prefer the Rampager set for the budget option instead of the Rampager. Now, when it comes to the rune, what am I using for if I were to go with the budget options? Well, there's a variety of options available for you, but if you are really in the budget option, then I would highly recommend you to go with the Let me just put up my spreadsheet right here. Just give me 1 second. So for the budget options, I would highly recommend you to go with the Superior Rune of the Afflicted. Now the reason why I'm recommending people to go with the Superior Rune of the Afflicted is because it will allow you to have the bleeding condition durations increase, and also the poison condition increase, and it will also increase your condition damage by 175 points. So in summary, the Superior Rune of the Afflicted will have 10% of, sorry, not 10%, 30% of the bleeding duration increase, 15% of the poison duration increase, and 175 points in condition damage. And whenever you are down, you can create a Death Nova skill, which has a cooldown of 30 seconds. Now, I also had a look at all the options, like the Superior Rune of the Berserker for the purchase option, and also for the Superior Rune of the Thorns, Superior Rune of the Thief, and etc. But I felt like those obviously you can go for the Superior Rune of Berserker. I'm not saying that you can't, but I felt that it would be a waste of money if you go with the Superior Rune of Berserker for the budget build, because chances are, if you are going to go with the Superior Rune of Berserker, then I highly recommend you just build the entire set with Vipers, because that will maximize the potential of the engineer with the Vipers instead of sticking it with the Rampagers. Alright, so for that reason, I felt that it more appropriate for the people to go with the Superior Rune of the Afflicted instead of Superior Rune of Berserker. Now I look at the Superior Rune of the Prec, I look at the Superior Rune of the Thorn, and I had a look at the Superior Rune of the Ore, and etc. And I felt that those kind of runes will increase your other condition damage tab. So for example, Superior Rune of the Prec is specialized in bleeding, and Superior Rune of the Thorn is specialized in poisons, and etc. Now the engineer has the ability to deal multiple damage condition tab, like all of them in the game, and so because of that, I don't actually know if that would be appropriate for me to be recommending a single condition damage tab. So obviously the burning condition damage is the highest damage in the game out of the condition damage tab. So I could recommend you to go with Superior Rune of both to increase your burning. But then again, the burning is, you already have a lot of condition duration already. So I just don't feel like that would be appropriate to just focus on one condition damage tab, instead going with increase your overall damage of all of the condition damage tab, because that's what the engineer is specialized in, dealing all of the condition damage tab to the target enemies or a single target boss. That's what it's good at, not just one but all of them. So because of that, for the budget options, I thought about it, and I would recommend people to just go with something like cheap and and still provide you with a decent amount of damage. So I came up with the Superior Rune of the Afflicted, and that will be the recommendation that I have for you guys for the time being until they introduce a new rune. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the equipment, for the budget. Now let's move on to the accessory. Now for the accessory, again, I always recommend the Rampagers for the engineer, because obviously it's precisions, power, and condition damage, with precision being the major, right? And so I already mentioned to you guys that precisions will convert 10% of that into condition damage, and so that just makes sense for you to go with Rampagers for the accessories. Now, alright. So that's pretty much it, what I want to say about the equipment. Now let's move on to the weapons. So for the weapon choice of the engineer is fairly simple. You're using 2 pistols, because pistol has the most condition damage out on the weapon tab for the engineer, so you'll be using 2 of them. Now for the stats, I would highly recommend people to go for the Vipers to get the maximum amount of damage, but if you do not have the access to the Vipers, then I would highly recommend you to take the Rampagers for the time being. Alright. So for the Sigil, now there are 2 Sigils. The first one is the Superior Sigil of Geomancy. Now the Superior Sigil of Geomancy will allow you to inflict the bleeding condition damage tab on your nearby targets, nearby enemies, whenever you swap a weapon. So because you have the bomb kit, you have the grenade kit, and then you also have your user weapon, which is the 2 pistols. And because you will be swapping your weapons on a regular basis, and because of that, it just makes a lot more sense for you to have the superior Sigil of Geomancy to inflict, to keep on inflicting the bleeding condition damage on your nearby enemies. Alright, so for the second Sigil, now the second Sigil is optional in the sense that is what you want to, what you can spend your resources on or access. So I refer that to the superior Sigil of Malice, which will increase your condition duration by 10%, or you can go with the superior Sigil of Bursting, which will provide you with a 6% increase in your condition damage. Now for me personally, I will go with the superior Sigil of Malice. The reason for me to be choosing the superior Sigil of Malice over the superior Sigil of Bursting was because I felt that my engineer would need a little bit of an extra 10% in condition duration to make everything 100% in the condition duration, because as I already mentioned to you, the engineer has the ability to deal all of the condition damage tab in the game, but not all of the condition damage tab will reach to a high number of condition durations. And I have already mentioned that the longer that the condition damage stays on the target, the more damage that you will deal over time. And because of that, I like to have a little bit of an extra 10% condition duration for all of my damage tabs, so that I deal more damage over time. But if you want to have an extra 6% increase in your condition damage, instead of letting the condition damage stays on the target longer, then go with the superior Sigil or Bursting. Alright, so that's pretty much it that I have for the weapons. Now let's move on to the other information. So I actually don't have anything to say about the other information sections, because obviously I already cover the majority, well, if not all of the stuff that you need to know about this build in the previous sections of this video already. Perhaps maybe I can talk a little bit about the new video that I have recently made in regard to a recap of the 3 new maps for 2016. The 3 new maps include the BloodStone Fen, Ember Bay, and the Bitterfrost Frontier. Now those 3 maps will provide you with the ability to purchase the ascended quality accessory, so that include the Backpiece, amulet, the ring, and the accessory. And at the current stage, it has the ability to have the staff, the stats of Vipers, Commanders, and everything. So like all of the new stats in the game, now you get it from those 3 maps. So I will include a link down in this description, so you can have a look at it and see if that's something that you would like to do to get to equip yourself with the Viper sets for this build. Alright, so that's pretty much it for what I want to cover for the engineer build condition damage. As always, if you have any feedback for me, feel free to leave it down in the comment below, and I'll try to rectify if there's a problems. I'll try to rectify that. As always, enjoy, have fun. I hope it has some use to you, and I will see you later.